On this episode of AV Week, rebranding a classic AV company. Panasonic cancels their in-person InfoComm presence and creating community virtually. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 493, recorded Friday, January 29th, 2021. Personal AV.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
And by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. I think I'm going to be closest to farthest away, so this will be tricky. First and foremost, Cassie Berger is from Shure, and Shure is a sponsor of AVNation. Well, welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And Cassie technically is the regional rep for Shure, so she is just on the other side of the river from me over in Missouri. So I'm going to guess the fact that New York is closer than Southern California. So Mr. Frank Paticala, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Frank is not only from Diversify, but also the host of our show, The IT Factor, where we take a look at the fact that AV is indeed IT. So also, last but not least, certainly last but not least, Joe Way, and I'm not quite sure how many retweets this will get since you're physically on the show, Joe Way from USC, but also Hatma and his own Fancy Smancy podcast as well. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me on. It's always great to be here.
Absolutely. And I will point out, just for nobody's other benefit other than Cassie, the fact that Joe and I are both using Shure microphones. Joe is using the brand spanking new MV7, which if you've been on our site anytime in the last month and participated in the AVNation Reader's Choice Awards, it's very interesting the fact that Shure is going against itself for the final round. So the MV7 and the 910 series. So I mentioned that only to say that by the time you listen to this, you can't vote anymore, but you can check it out. February 8th, we will be releasing the results of that. It's been very interesting, very fun, and lots of really good back and forth. Let's just put it that way. We'll start there. Starting off with our first story of the day comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. Panasonic has canceled their physical attendance at InfoComm 2021. Company will connect virtually with customers, quote unquote, prioritizing the safety of employees and customers in large venues. From the article, the Panasonic statement says, at Panasonic, we are always thinking about how we can effectively connect with customers, partners, and colleagues in the AV industry, especially since 2020 put a spotlight on the importance of being nimble and innovative to changing marketing conditions. We do have a statement from AVIXA, the organization that does put on the InfoComm show, quote unquote, since the early months of this global crisis, we at AVIXA have done our best to prioritize the long-term interests of our members and InfoComm community across the pro AV industry. This includes the timing and execution of the InfoComm show, where we are committed to the delivery of a platform for commerce, learning, and camaraderie. We respect the decisions of each of those in our community and appreciate the commitment and support that Panasonic has provided to AV professionals across the world. We also put the health and safety of our employees and show attendees before any other considerations and will continue to monitor the situation. Before we continue with this conversation, we are recording this on Friday, January 28th. Is that right? No, 29th. What is today's date? 29th. This is very possibly, and we're recording at 1 o'clock Central. At 2 o'clock Central, something may happen. Who knows? One thing I have learned in the past couple of weeks, regardless of whether it's InfoComm or ISE, Integrated Systems Europe, March 1st seems to be a market or a marker date, right? It's 90 days out roughly from any significant decisions. So I say that as we lead into this conversation. This is the first manufacturer to announce that they're pulling out and of the physical show in June. So Joe, first and foremost, from an education, from a higher ed standpoint, from a technology standpoint, and as well as an attendee standpoint, what does a decision by Panasonic like this do to your consideration and to your view of the InfoComm show in June?
I think when we all kind of heard it, the first thing that we all said was, okay, who was next? Right. We didn't all think, okay, of course it didn't, whatever. None of us are surprised. Right. And I think that because it takes such a amount of money and planning to do a show like that, you understand that larger companies have to make this decision. Now, if you look at it in terms of what's it going to do for me going to InfoComm or not going to InfoComm, it's not going to really change anything because we go to build our relationships, build our network, see our people. The products can always be gotten elsewhere. Right. Especially if you're a projector manufacturer, everyone can set up their booth and make their projector look right. I need it in my space anyway. So am I going to miss seeing my vendors, seeing and getting roadmaps, the hush room stuff? Sure. Of course, everyone kind of misses that, but that's really not why we go. We go in order to connect bigger to our vertical and our industry, and that won't change. Whether in higher ed, we even get budgets back for a lot of people to go. I'm probably rare. I'm going to go no matter what. But I could see that end users, and if that is the direction that, say, a Panasonic wants, they want their end users there, they want to show this, I can see why they drop. Because you might not have end user budget, especially in a large vertical like higher ed, that people couldn't even go even if they wanted to. So, it doesn't surprise me, but we do have to wonder who's next.
All right. And just for the record, again, as of today's date, the 29th of January, no one else has pulled out. Frank works for Diversified. Diversified's a rather larger multinational integrator. There are times when Frank's an engineer for them. So some years you may have gone, some years you may not have. So there are times where you would have been in person or you've been watching remotely. Does this do anything to your planning for, either the summer or as you're looking at projects coming down the line and your engineering projects waiting for those big announcements happening in June that may or may not happen now?
I'm going to echo exactly what Joe said, because in terms of product announcements or information about products, I think the manufacturers have all done an excellent job of repurposing their typical method of communication. And I honestly feel it's gotten a little bit more personal, because now we don't have to wait for the mega event to hear some of these things. They're reaching out to you. They're letting you know, hey, you guys, although we always complain about the abundance of video calls and, webinars, I think they have replaced that channel pretty efficiently, in my opinion, in that they're targeting smaller groups. They don't do 1,000-person event. They do 20 people in your office where you can interact with your technical and your sales resources, ask those questions. So from an engineering standpoint, as far as the pipeline of product announcements are concerned, I will probably say that 2020 has been my greatest year of awareness, because I know everything that's happening, because people are reaching out more than they have ever, almost to the point where we're asking them to stop. We're good for now, you guys, cool it for a bit, but it's good. I think what we're going to miss is the human component, right? The part of the InfoComms where we go and we connect with each other, and virtual events are coming up. That's, I guess, a work in progress, right? I think some events have been better than the others at connecting with the attendees, but that's always a challenge. I will say this, though. There's no real replacement for a booth. It's like we've gone to a virtual booth at several of these events. I don't know if it's your feet hurting or that part of the physical aspect of it, but actually walking to a booth, I don't want to say this, but I kind of miss that, right? It's like that is a good feeling, just walking around.
I totally miss that, just for the record. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
But so I really miss determining the best, most plush carpet booths. It's like, oh, head over there, that one's good.
You always know that the better designed booths have more attendees, even if the product itself has nothing to do with what you have, because people go there for the convenience of it. And clicking through booths is not the same. We got to do something about that, people. We really got to do something.
Yeah. So a couple of things really quickly about that before we let Cassie weigh in on this. The way before COVID, Joe and Hetma put together one of the first virtual events. I want to say, I'm not going to say it was the first virtual event, but in this space, because 10 years ago, SCN was doing virtual events. CE Pro did a avatar-based one, probably in 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. It reminded me of not Half-Life. It reminded me of Second Life, honestly, the CE Pro one. You guys, Joe had one in Hetma, then a number of, once everything shut down. We have done one with SCN now once, as well as we're doing one in March 4th that does have a virtual booth component to it. The sponsors seem to like it, from what I can tell. We had a number of engagements because we had a virtual booth for the December one, so that was kind of cool. But Frank's right. You can't touch and feel certain. You can't get your hands on a switcher or what have you. So, Cassie, you've been on both sides of this, both as an engineer for an integrator as well as now a manufacturer who exhibits with a fairly good sized booth with Shure. Just from your standpoint, you're looking at June and you're listening to these two gentlemen not only say, asking who's next, but also asking for that in person. When you're talking to your clients and the dealers and folks that you're talking to, are you getting the sense that at some point we are going to have some sort of in person, or are we just going to kind of wait for smaller regional ones, or are we waiting for InfoComm in June or whenever that is?
I mean, a couple things that I want to contribute to this because I find it very interesting. The conversations I've had with customers, Frank, to your point, I've been able to actually have better conversations through Zoom calls than I would have otherwise. People seem pretty engaged. The turning the camera on and off thing has been resolved for the most part. Most people have been given direction to turn their camera on. So you get the FaceTime. I get to put the product out there. I get to talk to my customers about what's new and show them some of those products, but you can't pick them up and look at the inputs and outputs and actually feel them. So we get a lot of those questions and we have to hold a product up to the camera and show them the back of the DSP or whatever it is, or the microphone. But overall, from a sales standpoint, I don't think that is it going to weigh either way. I can't really say. What I do look at, though, is how many jobs it's affected from the event standpoint or the marketing standpoint for all of these manufacturers. Because just from an event coordinator standpoint, that's their entire job, is to focus on shows like InfoComm and to put those together. And I have not yet been on a successful event platform that I really felt worked in any of these virtual trade shows. So when we look at ROI, are we really getting out the investment we're putting in? Because there's still sponsorship levels for all of these shows that we're still paying for. And at the end of the day, am I really getting that ROI? In fact, I was recently on one show that was a regional based show, and we did a walkthrough a couple days prior, and afterwards we collaborated in my team and said, all right, are we going to get anything out of this? Or do we instead send them all Grubhub, coupons in their email and a Zoom link and say, hey, I just bought you lunch, hop on a call with me for 30 minutes. We'll probably get more out of that. So we have to kind of weigh it out. I will probably, if InfoComm went virtual, I have wasted a lot of time sitting on calls waiting for people to come talk to me. I don't know if I would really do that or if I would offload it to somebody else, like a rep firm or something like that. I'd rather reach out to the people that I know that I wanted to talk to at those shows. Now I'm losing a ton of that foot traffic and the people that I didn't know I wanted to talk to, but now I realize there's a huge business opportunity for higher education being a huge focus with the CARES Act. So it's really, I don't know. It's interesting.
The one thing I will point out here as we wrap up this segment is I made the comment, and this was in conversation with someone else, so I'm kind of telling on myself, but I have no problem saying this publicly. I would argue that what I will call the top tier manufacturers don't necessarily need in-person InfoComm, right? They don't need ISC. And when I say top tier, I am talking about Shure, right? I am talking about Legrand. I am talking about Crestron and the other ones. And you know who I'm talking about, right? It is the 10x10s on the outskirts that do need that, right? It is the innovators. It is the folks that are making stuff in their garage and bringing it to InfoComm for the first time or the second time that need InfoComm to happen. They are, they're going to sit across the hall or sit across the hallway or the pathway from someone else, and that's where collaboration a lot of times happens. That's where a lot of M&As happen, and so that's where I think one of the aspects of the business is lost in the virtual. Yes, we can connect. Yes, we can have lunch. We can do whatever we want here virtually. We do this every week, right? But it's that in person and it's that serendipitous connection that I think a lot of times we miss. So, all right, next story comes to us from our friends over at AV Network. AV in the AM celebrates 3 years. I knew Chris Netto when he was just this, not really. And Chris is the same age as me. He tells you he's younger, but he's not. He's like, May to September younger than me. Popular Sunday chat that happened 3 years ago with our buddy Mr. Chris Netto celebrated 3 years on January 24th. I do want to read one comment from our buddy Meg Sheeraney Smith. If you want to read both Joe Way and Frank Patakala's comment about it, you can go to the link that Mitchell will put on. Quote unquote from Meg, it's a community that's centered around a shared love for what we do. We come from all diverse backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, religions, and creeds, but we all love AV. We're a community, and I love that about hashtag AV in the AM because we can disagree and still have beers together, even virtually. Mr. Joe, you have also been a part of creating a community with HETMA and a number of others. So let's talk a second. Not necessarily, I don't want to discount what Chris has done. It's been phenomenal. But also as a jumping off point, how do we build community within COVID? Well, how do we build community virtually? And then how do we translate that into real life? Because we will eventually get back to real life, whether that is InfoComm in June, that is ISE in June, that is ISE next year in Barcelona in 2022. Just for the record, that's probably when I'm going to go, or 23 or 24, who knows? Who knows when the European Union will let me back in? There's a story there and it involves Chuck Espinoza. So Joe,
we all want to know that story.
I know you don't. There's not enough vodka yet, or gin. How do we build it virtually, and then how do we translate that into real life?
That is a great question, because I think that there's a lot of commonality between the last article and AV in the AM. What has made it successful is exactly that. The fact that we can all come together, no matter our background, no matter where we are in the industry, from an end user to a manufacturer to an integrator to someone who's 6 months into it to a seasoned veteran. And we all can come together and put an opinion out there and meet in a common place. And that's really going back to what made HETMA successful. We throw the moniker that we were virtual before it was cool. And we spend the least amount of money on any platform for our things. We spend exactly zero. Okay. And the thing is, but it's still popular. Why? Because we take like-minded people, we put them together and say, here, have a conversation about X topic. How does it impact you? What do you need from it? Build those connections, the people who can get your needs taken care of. Bring in the best people in the industry to speak to it. And that's the recipe for success. That's what works on AV in the AM. Has worked with HETMA. That's what's worked with the large manufacturers who have been able to be successful, even though there hasn't been, the InfoComms, all those, because they've been able to create their own platforms where they can reach, their customers on a personal level. And that's really the only secret, right? It's not, can you send out the marketing email? Can you do the most, fantastic back end platform? Can you reach your person and speak to their needs and show how what solution you're going to bring can impact them for what they're going through? And that's exactly what AV in the AM is. That's why we all get together. That's why I get up at a god awful hour on the West Coast. And if I'm on at 5:10 a.m., I'm already upset that I missed 10 minutes of it, right? And but I think that that's great, because that really defines who we are as a people.
I like that. And I at another time when we have more time, I will tell you guys a story of the time that Chris and I were in London together, heading to Belgium, actually. This is back when he worked for Barco, and I got a chance to see the back end and the master at work. We're on a train, and he's conducting AV in the AM. And it was quite phenomenal. So I am very humbled by that. Cassie, both from again, Cassie used to work for an integrator, works for a manufacturer now. How do you do what Joe just said? How do you connect with your customers and your clients in a virtual way and really kind of deliver something to them, even if you can't be in person?
I mean, everything Joe said is, I share the same feelings about it. It's great to be able to have those types of communities and get to know people in a way that you wouldn't have that opportunity. I mean, I don't have a background up. You can see my pictures in the background and it humanizes me. I'll have a kid run up behind me. I'll have a dog, come over and try to get my attention. And you see that and you all of a sudden become not the salesperson, not the business person, but I become a mom. I become, somebody who knows what I'm talking about, but I also have a life that's not work. And you don't get that anywhere else except for the virtual platform. So then when you make it also an open community where anybody can come talk about anything, share ideas, thoughts, argue, it becomes a family too. And so you're bringing this family dynamic into your interactions with colleagues, with somebody you would never even have a chance to talk to otherwise, maybe an executive at a large manufacturer. And you're getting their opinion and their voices, but you're also seeing their life and their lifestyle and who they are way more than you would otherwise. And that's what I really do appreciate about this new virtual world is how much you get to appreciate and understand people. And you don't feel like you're on it all the time. I'm wearing gym shorts right now. I mean, I'm business on top. I promise you I have gym shorts on. It's like, I get to be comfortable and talking and I get to talk to others. It's that type of virtual platform is great. And if we can, after COVID, take this and learn from it and make it more human moving forward into the trade show environment and atmosphere, fantastic.
All right. Just for the record, I am not wearing gym shorts. So nobody wants to see that. So, Mr. Paticala, you'll have the last word on this by either AV and the AM or virtual community in general. How do we do this?
Let's start that off with something that I've always said from the very beginning of the pandemic, and when we first started seeing the plethora of virtual events. People should never, and I'm talking specifically to the organizers and the events companies that do these things, don't look at a virtual event like you would an in-person event. When you're doing an in-person event, the human connection, your eyes, your senses actually do a good job of filtering what you need and what you don't need. If it's too loud and you don't like it, you go away from it. If it's quiet and you like it, you go towards it. You can't do that in a virtual event. You're basically force feeding the entire event to people. In addition to the fact that this is I have 3 screens right now. So I do have my emails popping up on the side. I'm focused on the conversation, but I believe I can multitask, right? That what an event should strive for is to make me stop looking and focus on the event. So what needs to happen is a streamlining, like Joe said, of like-minded people. And that means to be more specific in the sense that if I'm a salesperson and I'm here for the marketing and for the product placement, put me in those streams. But if I'm an engineer and I'm not really interested in the sales part of it, put me in a tech stream. Make it as focused as you can. That's how you can build up a virtual event. Virtual communities thrive on people who can communicate with each other and just build on that. That's what AV and the AM. Well, AV and the AM, in my opinion, is a little different to that because the closest thing I can compare to AV and the AM is when I first went to India and I got to see the public transport system there, right? So if you go to a train station there's like 1 million people, right? And nobody's going to help you get on the train. All you got to do is just stand in the middle of a crowd. You'll end up on the train. They'll push you in, right? So that's AV and the AM for me, right? Just get up, wake up at 8 a.m., say, okay, or I agree is good enough to start.
Or better yet, I disagree, which is even better, right?
Yeah,
especially
I disagree. Just say a 2-word answer to some question that Chris posted, and you can actually have a conversation there. So I like that, the randomness of it. But in general, I feel that virtual events need to be streamlined to the individual's taste. And, whatever way you do that, whatever method you use for that, make it a shorter event, half-day event, 30-minute event, doesn't matter. But you'll get the most out of it by getting the people to stay focused, basically. Yeah. Quite simply.
All right. That visual right there actually is probably one of the better explanations I've ever heard of AV and the AM. So, all right. Last story comes to us from Sound and Communications. Hall Research I guess you could say, is technically no more, but not really. Hall Research is rebranding as Hall Technologies from the article, quote unquote. Hall Technologies is embracing the rapid evolution of the AV industry, a new ecosystem of products featuring end-to-end solutions. For all of these and more will be announced by Hall Technologies later in the year. It's rebranding. You can find them at halltechav.com. Hall Research, though, has been a long time switching and video distribution manufacturer. This is kind of an interesting play, and not necessarily for Hall Research, but just in general, especially during this time. Rebranding in general is tricky. And Cassie, I'm going to start with you on this because I think it was 2 years ago, right about this time, 2 years ago, Shure came out with a brand new logo. You don't think that's a big deal. It is a huge deal, especially for a company as old as Shure. And you're gonna hate me for this, but I can't remember the name of the green that you guys came up because there's a special name for the green. And
Ignition green.
Ignition green. That's it. And I'm not kidding you. It's specific for Shure, right? Just like the yellow for Caterpillar. And again, I'm from the middle of Illinois. There's a specific yellow for Caterpillar. Cassie, we'll start with you on this. How do you walk through not only your employees, because you had to do this, but also your customers through a rebrand, through a new logo, through something like this? Because this is something that they've lived with for years. There are still people that I know that refer to Shure as Shure Brothers, for crying out loud. Okay, so this is not this is not something that Shure hasn't done before, or Hall. But how do you walk your customers through not just you guys didn't do a rebrand, but getting something new into the marketplace?
I think it's timing, and I think it's preparation. The biggest thing is preparation. So any brand look at Polycom, now Poly. A good example, because we didn't change our name, we just changed our logos. That alone was a to-do. That took a lot of time, energy, money to change. And before even thinking about introducing any type of branding change, you need to make sure that you have the marketing platform updated and ready. You have the marketing materials updated and ready. You have the sales tools and resources updated and ready. And that's even before introducing it to the internal team that's going to be dealing with all of these new resources and materials that are either print or PDFs. And then you have to take it to the channel. So then once you do it internally, which is going to take maybe even years of restructuring, changing everything, updating everything, and coaching that internal staff, you then need to coach the channel on using those new materials. So it's updating every single marketing campaign that you've worked on over the years with key accounts like Diversified, or providing the products to the information to the end users. The little things like rebranding means repackaging everything, means you're updating your manufacturing facility to have those new updated branded boxes. It is expensive, very expensive, and there's a ton of time, man hours applied to it, and it affects every single area of the business, whoever you are. So it's not a small task. I look at the information or the Hall Research article, and I actually repped Hall, so I'm very familiar with the products when I worked with my dad. So I repped Hall, and I look at that as they've either there was an acquisition. I haven't read that much about it, but I'm assuming acquisition or something, or their partnership. And I would absolutely expect a lot more products to enter the marketplace as indicated. And so anytime you're looking at that type of change, I would assume that it means that we're going to see a lot more flood the social media sites and and the market with new Hall technologies. They're trying to it seems to me, separate from where they were and move into this whole new sector. So that's how I read into it.
All right. Frank, same kind of question, a little bit more from the engineering side. You take a look at a move like this, how much do you kind of sit back and wait for them to make those announcements right before you start incorporating those into designs? Or is it something where, you start, putting them in right away? How much of a pause, I guess, does this give you?
Usually it depends on how their approach is, like Cassie just said. I mean, some people are very aggressive about their rebranding. Uh, Poly, in my opinion, was inevitable because we knew about the acquisition. We knew something would happen, but at the same time, they just changed like instantaneously. They were Poly. I still can't say Poly without actually giving it a moment of thought. I'll go to Polycom because that's how rooted I am in that original brand. So it's a good thing. The fact that they had a really good brand and they're stepping up. From a technology perspective, usually the first commitment that any manufacturer makes whenever they do a rebranding is that we're still the same company, nothing's changed, but we've just gone through it. And yes, there is a waiting period. We'd like to see where the change is. Usually a change like this means that they have either broadened their picture and they'd like to have a bigger share of the market, or they're going into territories that they normally aren't, which for an engineer, I am apprehensive primarily because I'm used to giving solutions that work, not saying that the solutions don't work. It's just that there's a benchmarking testing process that every company needs to go through before they do that. And the best part, I think most companies have done a good job about reaching out and giving us the down low and, this is what's happening and we can give you the opportunity to test it. And that's what's critical. I think from engineers care very little about the colors and the branding. We care about the quality of the product. And I'll tell you very honestly, anybody who listens to this, an engineer loves the person who picks up their phone or answers an email really quick. That's all that matters to us. So when I have a question, the sooner you can respond. And that to me also extends to personal branding. Because, for me, the quality of the product, sometimes the quality of the individual representing that brand means a lot more to us. So it's kind of here or there for an engineer. We will weigh out the technology aspects and the personal part of it a little bit more, I guess.
All right, Joe, Frank brings up a really good point, and that is getting product in and benchmarking it, which typically is pretty easy for an integrator. Not for USC, but for some lower tier universities, it might not be so easy. So what advice would you give to end users, to those folks, whether in Fortune 500 or in higher ed, to get some of those products in? Who are they working with? Are they working directly with manufacturers? Are they working with Cassie? Are they working more with the engineers and their salespeople on the dealer side?
Well, it's definitely changing. If you asked this question 3 years ago, I'd say our integrators funnel everything to us, and now I have a heck of a lot more boxes directly from manufacturer than I do. And in fact, as even I mentioned at PSNI, panel year and some ago,
almost 2 years ago, because we didn't do it last year. I know.
Almost 2 years is how many products I ended up showing to integrators when they would say, "Oh, we've heard this is coming out." I'm like, "Yeah, would you like to see it? I have it up hang here. You want to know how it works? I'm happy to train you on it." And but that's the reality that has switched. And I think that even goes to even when you're looking at a rebrand or something, that helps for the little, like, okay, USC, take me off the table, right? Looking at the average end user, or that's now building its own in-house integration team, and they want to get these, the products and want to know what to trust. That's where, if you are a major manufacturer, take Shure, who has, does rebrands, the logo and all that, it shows to us that they're always trying to connect to the user, that they're staying current, that they're trying to bring new products, they're trying to recognize that they're not going to fall behind. That gives added, assurance to us that, hey, I can trust that when I put this in and when I put it in 100 rooms, that it's going to be there for support. Flip side of that, a company can't just put lipstick on a pig. You can't be someone who is not a solid product and think that a rebranding and a repackaging and a fancier email and in a new rep is going to change anything, because it won't, right? Your product has to come first. Your reputation has to come first. And that goes full circle to what you said about virtual events, and the small people can't get that market share. It's really hard because I get hundreds of emails. I'm not opening it up if I don't know who you are, right? And that's really tough. But when I do get a major brand send me something and go, look what's new and shiny, I probably push it to the top of my 100 emails and go, oh, I want to see what's new and shiny. And would you like to sign up for our webinar? To say, yes, I do. When is it? And so that is a big difference. And that's where, sad to say, it makes a virtual world is much harder for the little guy, and especially to get into the littler schools, right? Because we only have so much we can, trust and money we can push or put around. That's where those manufacturer relationships are just really important.
Yeah, and I would also argue on the other side of that, those smaller schools, it's harder to get folks in, right? Regardless of where you are. I have talked with our buddy Scott Tyner up in Bates College in Maine for years about this. I mean, Scott, not that Bates College is a small school. It's not. It's a smaller liberal arts school, but he's in Maine, right? And it's a big state, very rural. And to get to Scott, it's going to take some time, right? It has to be, on purpose. And so, it's not like dropping into Southern California and he can then, a rep can hit you guys and, UCLA and other, and a dozen schools within a couple of days. So yeah, there's all the other side of that as well. So, all right, guys, that is going to do it. Thank you all so much. Mr. Frank Patakala, thank you, sir.
This was an amazing episode.
Well, just because of you three. How do people find you, or the IT Factor, or Diversified, or whatever you want to promote?
Well, I'm Frank Patakala on the socials. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can check out Diversified, the company that I work for, at www.diversifiedus.com. You can check me out and my podcast, IT Factor, here at avnation.tv. We focus on AV and adjacent technologies like IT, AI, VR. We go to all kinds of things. So check us out there.
Absolutely. And Frank's first interview is still one that blows me away. He got the Fraunhofer folks, the folks that give you MP3 and MPEG-4 and all that jazz. So Cassie, thank you, ma'am. How do people get a hold of you or Shure?
Yes, thanks, Tim. So Shure.com is our website. If you are more of the technical or IT side, we also have an embedded site, which is a tech portal. So check that out if you're not looking for consumer. Finding me, I'm on LinkedIn, Cassie Berger. You can search for me there. I'm not on the social medias otherwise. Too much drama, Tim, right? I will say that I'm also on the leadership search committee for AVIXA. So if you have any interest in AVIXA or being on the board, please feel free to reach out to me.
All right. And I will also, this is a personal plug, Cassie and I are heading up the St. Louis chapter of the AVIXA Women's Council. So if you were in the St. Louis metro area, and you know what that means if you were listening to this, either hit her up or hit me up, Tim at AVNation.tv, because we will be doing something either virtual or in person, I swear, sometime this year.
Yes, 21. We will. Thanks, Tim.
It's only January, February. Mr. Way, thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. It's always great.
And how do people find you or UCLA or your podcast?
UCLA?
USC. I just did a really major faux
Wow.
pas. Sorry, dude. It was in my head.
It's off the 110, not the 405. All right. Yeah, you can find me at Josiah Way on, of course, all the socials, and do find Hetma at hetma_org, hetma.org online, because we do have our next spring virtual conference coming up February 9th to the 11th. So encourage everybody to go. We do institutional members and affiliate members too. So we're looking forward to some great things that we have coming up. And of course, at Hire at AV for other stuff.
I was going to say and the magazine too. When does that come out?
On February 1. So the day this today. Episode is coming. Yes.
You're listening out. You're go check that out too. So my name is Tim Albright. At this point in the sports world, I think I'm rooting for Tom Brady. I really do. As a fellow 40 something, God love him. If he can do it at 43, 44, let's go, dude. But go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others, including our sponsors, including Shure. We thank them for their support. Helps us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and all the others, and the coverage of shows like InfoComm, regardless of where or when it happens, and ISE and all the others. So check out Frank's show, The IT Factor. Our buddy Steve Greenblatt does control and automation with the state of control and a number of others. I also mentioned at the very beginning of this, the AVNation 2020 Reader's Choice Awards. The voting has ended. You will find, go back to that page on February 8th, and you will find out who won what. And we're going to put together a fancy schmancy like little thing you can click through and see the products and or the picture of the person. So, all right, all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.